We are now live on the Conversations That Matter podcast. I'm your host, John Harris. I hope everyone's having a wonderful fall day out there. I know those in the Southwest, you're wondering what that is. Well, it's when the leaves start changing colors. They fall out of the trees. The air gets cold and crisp. We start drinking some apple cider. The girls, they get their pumpkin spice lattes, but it's a wonderful time full of cinnamon and jack-o'-lanterns, and just New York's the place to be. The Hudson Valley is the place to be for this time of year, except this time of year, we've had less rain, and so it's not quite as stunning. I told my wife we were driving yesterday to Connecticut, actually, to be at Jake Dell's church, First Congregational of Woodbury. And it was pristine as far as the architecture and the landscape. It's just quaint New England towns that we were driving through. And I told her, this feels like a North Carolina fall. And they have fall in North Carolina. We live there. We experienced it. Things just get brown and die, though. It doesn't really have the vibrant reds and yellows. And New York this year, unfortunately, I'm watching leaves fall outside. They are yellow, but it's a muted yellow. So I'm really grateful. We had a wonderful men's retreat. Thank you for those who prayed. Thank you for those who came. It was wonderful to meet you and see you there. And we had excellent weather. It was warm, yet they have already had a few freezes in the mountains. So it was actually a lot more vibrant than it is here in the Hudson Valley. And I think we hit it just about peak, or if not right before peak. It was just about perfect timing. I don't think we could have had a better weekend the entire year to go to the Adirondacks and have a men's retreat. And I tell people this every year. I say, if you come to the men's retreat, yeah, come for the teaching, come for the subject matter. Some people, though, have figured out, actually, that's not the main reason to come. It's to come for the fellowship and to come for the facilities, meaning everything. The weather, the facilities at Camp of the Woods itself, because it's so nice, the food there, and just the landscape. And you just relax. You start relaxing day two for some people. I mean, it takes a little time, but once you get in the mode and you're just on that lake, you open the door and it's just fresh air, and you have your Christian brothers there, and you can talk about anything you want to talk about, just about. It is something else. So I'm really, really happy that it went well. And I think I'm going to make some changes. I always say this every year. I'm going to make some changes next year. I really hope I will, because I'm the one that organizes it. And sometimes, in this year it did, translates into emceeing and recording the videos and trying to operate the slideshow at times, and speaking and figuring out people who came that I didn't have on my list. There's always something that's going to slip through the cracks. That's any event. And so what I'm thinking of doing is doing a volunteer list of people who can just take one thing. Like, hey, could you just be the guy that makes sure we have coffee? Like, that's your only job. And, we'll, I don't know, give you a discount or something. I don't know. We'll see how that works. I don't have like a big church or anything that is involved in the organizational process. It's pretty much been me. But I think despite that, it still went pretty well. We didn't have the microphone on the last day, so I couldn't figure that out, because I have my limits, guys. Tech is not really my thing as much. I prefer to have people just do the tech, edit the video. Like, let me just present the information. But I find a lot of what I do does involve editing and tech and figuring it out. And but that's good, though, because I feel like I know a lot more now, even though it's still not as much as some of you know about tech than I would otherwise. It forces me into knowing about different things. And so, see, my thing is this: like, the older you get, you should have I think this is just my opinion. You should have a more honed out kind of skill set. Like, you should be able to do so many different things that even when a new thing comes up, you can apply the principles you've learned in other things to that new problem. And so if you are a homeowner, obviously you have to get to know plumbing and electric and carpentry. And it is one of the reasons I think it's good to get a trade before you go to college, right? Learn some of those things. Tech is now one of those things, right? I feel like I'm sounding like Trump here. Like, we got to learn the tech, right? We got to learn the cyber. The cyber's big. But learning some of the technology stuff, yeah, that's really good. And then it has a wide applicational use in personal and professional life. Some of this, I guess, I get from Richard Weaver, just his the whole paradigm of the philosopher king, and then the gentleman, and then the specialist. And the specialist, of course, being the person who only knows his narrow field, can't get outside of it. And those people tend to be people who are the most unaware, and they get weird. You just get weird. Like the more you understand a wide array of things, I think the more it rounds you out. So that's a freebie out there. That's just my John Harris's advice for young men when they're starting out, I guess. Since that's what I'm doing now. I'm just giving young men advice about dating and all. I didn't ask for this job, but it's honest work. In fact, probably tomorrow or Wednesday, I'm going to have a second follow-up video for those who watched my video on the 10 rules for dating. I'm going to have one on 10 strategies. And one of my rules was not to overthink it. So I'm going to be tempered in my strategies. But I've realized through conversing with various guys online, because I'm getting a lot of messages about this topic, mostly good, actually. People telling me, John, I because of, I guess, what you said, I asked the girl out and she said yes. And I'm like, well, that's great, But there's definitely questions coming in that are like, John, do I just walk up to a girl cold? And some people think that's what I was saying on a tweet last week. And no, actually, I don't. I thought I had specified a girl you think you might like, which in my mind means you know her on some level to know that you might like her. I mean, how else would you know, right? And then you approach. But okay, so a lot of things that I think a lot of people take for granted. Not everyone is. And some of the questions I'm getting just make me realize, okay, we need to start basic, not with everyone, but some people could maybe use that help. And I'm no Casanova here, right? I am no, is that even the word? I don't know. I'm no girl whisperer, guys. I'm pretty normal. I'm pretty average when it comes to my I have a lot of stories, but I was bold, but I didn't have an inside scoop on this stuff. I was just figuring it out. I felt like in many ways, and my friends were mostly guys. I had some friends. I had a few friends that were girls, but yeah, I mean, I grew up with brothers, so girls were just different, and I had to figure a lot of this stuff out. And anyway, it worked out, and I don't know. I think there's some basic things that are being missed. I think technology has a lot to do with it. So I think you can use technology. That's going to be one of my actually tactics or strategies is you can use technology, but you can't let it use you. And you can't make the destination technology. It can be an on-ramp, but you got to bring it offline. So we're going to talk about all of that and how that works in my humble estimation for those who are interested in it. But on this beautiful day, we're almost 8 minutes into the podcast. We have a lot to talk about that's news related. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Pope. We're going to talk about the Archbishop. I mean, we're just going to the top levels today. We're going to talk about evangelical Christianity in the United States. There's several opinion pieces. I don't know if we'll get to all of them. Curtis Yarvin wrote one this morning I thought was pretty interesting. It's getting widely criticized because long and short of it is he's basically saying Trump administration isn't doing enough fast enough. And when the pendulum comes back, we're all going to have to run for our lives, figure out an escape plan now, head for the hills. And actually, I think he makes some decent points, but there's also the fact that he's Curtis Yarvin. So he has things that he's a smart guy. There's things that are worth hearing and listening to, but at the end of the day, he's not really resting in any kind of divine purpose. In fact, even the way he describes in his article, Providence, is this very cold kind of mechanism, and it doesn't care who hurts and so forth. And I'm like, yeah, that's not really the Christian view. So I think the hope of Christianity is that the Trump administration is a stepping stone, and and I don't mean the hope of Christianity in the sense of that this is like the eschatological fulfillment of anything. I mean like the way that Christians approach these things. When there's a positive move in the right direction on certain things, we're going to take that and we're going to hope that we can expand on it. And we're not going to just get depressed about the fact that it's not enough. We're going to try not to, at least. Right. And I do agree with Curtis Yarvin. Yeah. I mean, the clock is ticking, guys. Like we're going to be nearing the 2-year mark. And I don't know, man. I don't know. It's if we're going to be 2 years in the administration and the progress is going at the rate it's going now, then I would agree that it's got to be more. I mean, that's why it's so important to capitalize on this and make sure that the political situation is such that we can get whoever it is, by the way. I don't know who it's going to be. I hope it's someone good, but if it's Vance, I would be happy with that. I know Peter Thiel, guys. You know who? I shouldn't say it. They probably don't want me saying it, even though they said it publicly. Now I'm not going to say it. Someone I know, someone that many of you know, knows Peter Thiel real well, and we had a good conversation about Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel's kind of an odd guy. I'm not saying that it's good to be in business with Peter Thiel like that, Peter Thiel, but I don't necessarily think that Vance is a puppet of Peter Thiel. I actually am pretty positive about Vance for the most part, but I think whoever it is, and Rubio and Vance are the only ones Trump's mentioned to sort of take MAGA to the next level. This has to be a long-term approach, what's going on. And there are going to need to be some changes. And maybe we can talk about that sometime. Today is not that day, but there you go. I did talk about Curtis Yarvin's opinion piece. That was one. There's a Clyde Wilson opinion piece we may talk about, but we'll see where we get. We'll see where we get in the podcast. We got to talk about the big stuff. And one of the big things right now that I need to mention is where I'm going to be speaking. So if you would like to come, we're going to be at Jesus and Politics, Maple Grove Church, Topeka, Indiana, October 25th through 26th. That's this month. Go sign up. There's a sign up on Facebook. I have on johnharrismedia.com or johnharrispodcast.com. You'll get there. You can find the speaking engagements. We got the Texas Truth Movement, October 28th. That's only a few days after that in Houston, and I'm looking forward to this. Valley Ranch Grill and Barbecue. I mean, they're speaking my language. We're going to go get some barbecue and talk about liberalism. That'll be fun. And then November 7th through 9th, Truth is Forever Conference, Palm Harbor, Florida. We'll be talking about discernment. And I'm already starting to think about that topic. That's a big topic, man. 3 sessions. It's going to be interesting. We're going to be talking about discernment, and we're going to be blazing new trails. So come on out for that. And the new trails, of course, will go along the old paths. Speaking of new trails and old paths, the information or the presentations that we had at the men's conference, Music and Masculinity, they are being posted. They are being posted on TruthScript. So you can go to TruthScript on YouTube. You can go to TruthScript even on X. I don't know if all the lectures will be posted on X, but they will be on YouTube, and they will be through the TruthScript. I think it's on iTunes and Spotify. There's an audio feed, so you can get the podcast. But we are going to be releasing stuff on music. That was the topic. There's going to be some other things in there as well. Mine was the first one that we released because I was actually able to get that out at the retreat itself. There's people asking me who came later because I was the first one to open it up about it. So I was like, all right, I'll try to get this out there. And I would encourage you to go listen to that. It's called A Defensive Tradition. I think that and the speech I just gave not too long ago at Michael Foster's conference called The World Right in Front of You. I gave a speech on counterfeit virtue. And the counterfeit virtue one especially, I'm getting a lot of really positive feedback for. And I don't talk about this stuff, not in the way I do in those speeches on the podcast. So if you want to go listen to that stuff, you'll have to do a little work and actually go to the TruthScript YouTube channel to find my talk on tradition and ideology. It's called In Defensive Tradition. And then you'll have to go to Michael. Where did he post it? I'm trying to think now where Michael posted it. I think it's East River Church's YouTube, East River Church on YouTube, and you'll find my talk on counterfeit virtue. So both of those, go check those out. But we got more speaking coming up. Let's get started. Let's go through some of the topics here. There's already some comments coming in. I'll just highlight a few of those. Cosmic Treason said Jerry Doris had several people from his church help out hosting the singles mixer. Only problem was that the girls serving food were cuter than the girls in attendance. Well, that's not a very nice thing to say, Cosmic Treason. That is not very nice. I don't know. I mean, I really have a loss of words at that. I mean, I push going to those things, mixers, or I don't know what other kind of forums exist in the Christian world. I'm not in that particular stage of life, but if you can go to a church that's got a singles group or has opportunities to be with other people that are of a eligible age, then I would consider doing it. We got Charles Martle. Man, Charles Martle, I thought you were passed away a long time ago. Just finished last Adult in the Room episode. I really appreciate the work you do, John. I wish more listened to you. Well, I appreciate that. It's very kind of you. we'll talk about that a little bit. Why don't more listen to me? No, I'm just kidding. uh, in all seriousness, though, it is kind of surreal. It's kind of fun. It's really fun to see so many really big names going off on Tim Keller's Third Way. And I'm sitting back. I'm like, man, I was doing this 6 years ago. I was talking about Tim Keller's Third Way. And there's so much information on it. I mean, I think it was a Third Way magazine I talked about at one time in my book, Social Justice Goes to Church. I've done so much work on it that after some of the reactions to Charlie Kirk's death, which I'll play you, I just was like, well, I've covered this. I covered it while Tim Keller was alive. Relevant Magazine did a write-up on a back and forth Tim Keller and I had on X. And I don't know, I just been there, done that. Feel like, and if you listen to me for any length of time, you know I'm very supplemental. In fact, Michael Foster called me hipster. He said that if it's popular, I'm suspicious of it. I just kind of do my own thing. And I'm like, I never considered myself a hipster, but I do tend to be suspicious, I guess, of novel things and movements of the youth and so forth. Like I'm sort of initially skeptical, and if it becomes too popular, I'm like, is everything okay with this? Now, sometimes it is, right? But yeah, sometimes I remember Lord of the Rings came out, and I was like, oh, this is great, and then everyone loved it, and I was like, yeah, I don't know about Lord of the Rings, and then I realized, nah, I don't care if everyone loves it. It's actually really good, but. Yeah, I don't know if that's my personality or what it is, but I don't know. I'm just very supplemental. Like I don't want to talk about all the things that everyone else talks about. If I do, I want to give it kind of like a passing mention, and then when I get to like the things I want to talk about, the conversations that I think matter, right? But it's been surreal to watch the Third Way stuff after Tim Keller's death become a topic that's debated, and the way it's being debated is just so funny to me, because you have these guys saying. Like from Gospel Coalition, I think Adil Shenvi was doing this the other day. They're just like, oh man, you wait till after his death to go after him. Like, I'm thinking, man, I didn't. Oh, my critiques were before he died. I mean, I interacted with him. I don't understand. It's no, some of us didn't do that, but a lot of the things people are saying are things that I've been saying for years. And you know what? Good. I say good to that. I'm not jealous of that at all. I'm not upset. Like, I don't know. There's some people that were bringing that up, like John, like a lot. These are your talking points or whatever. Like you've been covering this for. That's like, so what? I don't have a copyright on truth, and I'm really glad to see other people doing it. That's the whole goal of this podcast, guys. I've told people before, you can take the ideas that you hear on this podcast and you can go with them. The truth. It's about the truth. Okay. It's not about who gets credit for it. It's just about we're for the kingdom of God. We're for righteousness. We're for truth, the good, true, the beautiful. If there's anyone who has a copyright, it's God, right? So go and use whatever you want. That's how I view it. Now, if you're going to use it for academic purposes, obviously obey the rules of the academic process and don't plagiarize. But that's how I view that. So, yeah, I mean, if you want to be on if you're cutting edge, if you want to know what's going to happen, I guess in 6 years, 5 years, yeah, listen to this podcast, and I guess I'll tell you. I mean, for what, at least 2 years, I've been talking about ideology pretty strongly. I went back, actually. I've been mentioning ideology since the inception of this podcast, but it really was like 2.5 years ago. I really started to go in on it. I started to go in on the hyper ideologue, neo-Nazi type stuff. And what I find interesting is larger conservative platforms are starting to take notice of this. And they're seeing it as, and then there were guys who were always seeing this more from a liberal angle, but unfortunately the net was cast so wide, they were just, it wasn't ideology they were necessarily critiquing. They were just kind of like anything that deviated from liberalism. It didn't matter if it was paleoconservatism or Christian nationalism or you fill in the blank, neo-Nazism, whatever. Like it was all bad. It was always woke right. But no, there was a very specific pathologized way of thinking that's ideological. And so I've been critiquing this. I've been tracking it. This is part of my critique of social justice. And it's good to start seeing some more conservative it's just starting, some mainstream guys taking note of this, that like, okay, if we're going to be conservative, we're going to get back to American tradition. We have to be about tradition here. It's got to be about, it's a natural order and the traditions that have kind of interpreted and applied that order to our lives over time. It's the wisdom of the ages. That's what we're about. That's the conservative instinct. And it's not a top-down math equation. It's not I mean, that's honestly for lazy thinkers. Someone can sound smart when they've adopted ideology because you only have to know the specialist thing. You have to know a very narrow strain of things, and then you can have the key to everything. Whereas I think if you're a good thinker and if you're carrying forth a tradition and you're self-aware of the threats to it, then you have to actually have a wider array of knowledge. And you have to examine all the kinds of things, all the ripple effects that could happen when you start moving gates around. Chesterton's fence, when you move that around. So anyway, it's good to see that. We'll talk about that maybe a little because Clyde Wilson weighed in. I didn't realize that. Clyde and I were actually exchanging emails about a year ago about this. And I even asked him, I was like, would you want to, you're basically the premier historian of Southern history. Would you like to do something, like an article? Like I could probably connect you if you're interested in. And at the time he really didn't. And now I've found out that he did for his daughter's blog, Reckoning, which is a good blog to read. So let's get into some stories, guys. Let's do it. Let's talk about this. First of all, Megan Basham posted it. I had some folks from McLean reach out to me and then just upset about this particular video. And it's like, I can understand why. I'll play it for you.
So I had to sit with my high school daughter to help her process the ungodly and inhumane reactions of other students around her. Nobody should have seen that video and laughed. But I also had to sit with my high school daughter and help her process some of the things Charlie Kirk said.
Amen. Yes. Amen. Yes.
There's some rhetoric from Charlie Kirk that followers of Jesus should firmly denounce.
Amen.
Listen.
Amen.
He says some things clearly and unapologetically true from a biblical perspective.
Amen.
And I know there were some clips that were taken out of context. I understand what it's like to have that happen to you. It's probably going to happen today after this message.
We love you.
Love you too.
Can I just say something? This was the standard go-to when I was clipping Big Eva clips a few years ago, and I just kept releasing over and over, hey, here's the professor, here's what he's saying. He goes to Southeastern, he's at Southern, whatever. This is what they're saying, and I'm going to just give it a wider distribution so you can see. And this was like the go-to thing. He's taking it out of context every time. He's taking it out of context. Look over here. This person says he contradicts what he said over there. Yeah, okay, so Mike Kelsey, good example of this. Mike Kelsey said that torching white people, he thought about torching white people, right? And this was his anger over the whole George Floyd situation and so forth, white evangelicals especially. So it was clipped. And then, of course, there's all these videos of him saying that's not what he meant, or he was misunderstood. Of course, he doesn't want to kill anyone and all that. And it's like, and so you play those clips and you're like, see, you're just taking them out of context. That's not who Mike Kelsey is. It's like, okay, so he's a hypocrite. Like, what's the point you're trying to make here? Like, he's not apologizing. He really has never truly apologized for it. It's just it's like an apology that you misunderstood, kind of thing. And this is so typical. And I saw this the other day. I actually, it was the same treatment when I posted a few Nick Fuentes clips that people were like, "You're taking them out of context." And it's like, dude, it's just a joke. No one can tell you what the joke, how the joke. I mean, everyone knew it was a joke. Right. He was making fun of marriage and dating. And there's several videos and you could just go on forever. There's like 3 of them where he's like saying that it's associating homosexuality with marriage and dating. It's like, well, look at this over here. He's also saying that marriage is good. It's like, yeah, well, duh. Like, of course he is. This is how, honestly, this is the problem, I think, with Big Eva. But it's not just Big Eva. This is a problem with a lot of modern influencers. And I think I said this in a video a few days ago that you've got a lot of guys who have the gift of gab. They can be comedians. They have a quick wit, perhaps. They are smooth in the way they speak. That's the main qualification to get on a stage, to be a pastor these days. That's basically it. You got to have a good presentation and stage presence. You have to be able to cast an image of yourself that is palatable, that people can, and whether it's authentic or not, it doesn't matter. I mean, today with our technology, you get less and less authenticity is fine. But you're not getting people who are careful thinkers in these roles generally. The quality has gone way down. It's gone down in everything. I mean, have you watched the new Superman movie? Like, I mean, it's like, it's entertainment in general. The quality has just gone down. I know I'm going to get back to Kelsey in a moment here. I'm making a point though. It is, the character development isn't there in movies. It is constant stimulation is what it is. Constant and to be stimulated more and more in our day and age, you have to seek more and more edgy content, radical things people say, like a calm, cool, collective voice that is just sort of like even keeled. That's not popular. And I think there's a reason for that. It's just people are so, to pierce through the crowd of voices, you have to kind of stand out. You have to say outrageous things. It has to be extreme. It has to be something that jolts you. And the capacity for being jolted is just less and less and less. That's just the modern world we live in. It's a consequence of a number of things, but one of them being the technology that we hold in our hands, and reels and short attention spans and all the rest. So going back to Mike Kelsey, Mike Kelsey does this kind of thing. Yeah, Charlie Kirk, he's been taken out of context, and relating, I've been taken out of context. No, Mike, like you weren't taken out of context. You're just, you said things that were more than edgy. They were wrong. They were immoral, and you should just repent and apologize and own it. You weren't taken out of context. I watched the context. I watched the video. I was trying to figure it out. Okay, what's the context here? Okay, you felt like torching white people. Okay, well, I don't know what to do with that, right? Just because you said something different over here doesn't take away from the fact that you said this there. Was it a joke? How is that a joke? That's, like, what's funny about that, right? What's funny about saying things that mock people made in God's image, mock institutions that God has ordained? I just don't, I don't buy it. I don't think it's certainly not mature, but I don't think you should follow a man like that. It really it is it is beneath you as a believer in the Lord Jesus Christ. You have a great example, and you have plenty of godly men, even if they're on the local level. And if you have to move, but be around those people, be around mature people who take ownership. If they actually make a mistake, if they sin, that's not Mike Kelsey. I should have queued the clip up where he talks, the one he's saying that was taken out of context, but I digress. Okay, I'm off my high horse, not my high horse, my hobby horse. Some people would say my high horse. Here Mike Kelsey is, and he's about to tell you that Charlie Kirk actually was not being taken out of context in all the circumstances. He's not a good guy.
But y'all, I was getting bombarded by so many questions over the last couple of weeks, and quite frankly, bombarded by so many unsolicited opinions. And so I spent hours just watching long-form debates, interviews, speeches. And just to be frank, in a lot of cases, the context didn't help at all. In fact, in some cases, I was shocked that so many professing Christians were rationalizing things that were so demeaning and unchristlike. And not just rationalizing things he said, but idolizing him as the prototype for a new generation of Christians. And here's my point in all of that. This is not just Charlie Kirk. This is all of us. Every single one of us is tempted to talk to or about people in ways that not only dishonor them, but the God who created them in his image.
Amen.
Yeah, clap and incriminate yourself. Yeah, it's true of all of us. And it's true as we think about other issues too.
I don't know, like, is torching white people, is that attack on God's image? I just, all right, we've done enough with him. This is Mike Kelsey from McLean Bible Church, of course, pastor there alongside David Platt. And you hear him preaching from the stage there in his t-shirt. I don't know what in the world's going on with standards these days. I mean, it's just being dumbed down so much. Cosmic Treason asks, what do we call this preaching style? Gay pastor, because everyone knows what I mean if I say black preacher style, but this Big Eva breathy emotional preaching needs a name. Yeah, I mean, I first heard it not in preaching, but in Christian music, right? It was like the I was like, why is an adolescent boy breathing sweet nothings into my ear, playing his guitar, in a just 3 chords over and over and over in this warm campfire melodic kind of trance. And it's very appealing, I think, especially to females, but I can't see why males would be attracted to it. It just doesn't seem to me to be something males would be attracted to. But I remember even at Master Seminary, I had a theology of worship course, and we would be critiquing these things. They play videos, and I sometimes would be the only one in class. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not into that. The guys that I know that back home wouldn't listen to this. I don't know why this is even popular. And it's like my professor would look at me like I had 2 heads. Like, I'm like, okay. I mean, it seems pretty effeminate to me. Seems like the guy was kicked when he was a kid. I don't know what to say. Like, it's just not masculine presentation. Not that you have to be masculine on everything when you're appealing to a wide breadth of people, but it's like when that's the only thing you get is this breathiness. It is kind of weird. Now, in preaching, I think it sort of translates into this fake sophisticated TED Talk type approach where, you might use some big words, but it's always relaxed. It's always like, we're just having a conversation. Aren't we so intimate up here? I mean, I don't even need a pulpit. If I do, it's like glass. It's like, it's more of a lectern, and I'm going to pace around. I'm going to move around a lot. And we're just taking a walk here, guys. We're just sharing a story with each other. It's so, I don't know. There's sort of a kickback against this with some guys now going formal again. But even that, I'm always suspicious, I suppose. I'm like, let's just make sure that itself is also not just another image we're facilitating. Let's actually look nice, because we actually want to look nice. We think it matters because we believe people are made in God's image, and we want to treat them well. We want their eyes not to be distracted by our style. We want their ears to receive the truth and not be, the mode needs to match the message. And so if the mode is too weird, too different, too, I don't know, you're preaching judgment and you're in a calm voice, like, it doesn't work, right? So anyway, Mike Kelsey there, I mean, that's not like super into the style, this Big Eva sort of preaching style, but it definitely is partially there. It's getting there. It's just like you don't see a "thus saith the Lord" in that as much. It's very much like, here's just my opinion and how I'm kind of, it's like a podcast, right? That's what we're doing right now. We're doing a podcast. Podcasts and sermons are 2 different things. And I do see a blurring starting to form. So not a good thing. But Brock Anthony says the Greek word for hypocrites Jesus mentioned is the Greek word for actor. They purposely put on a show. That's very true. Very true. I think that's what we have in a lot of places. Our leaders tend to be actors. That's not good, guys. That's not good. Ryan says sometimes the pastors have to fight wolves. Not sure why or when pastors forgot or ignored that. Yeah, very true. Very true. So obviously that's not the only thing that you need to be a pastor, is to have there's also the fake virtue of bravado, which I talk about in my Counterfeit Virtues lecture at East River Church. But there you go. And here's another one. And the same kind of style here. And it's another preacher reacting to Charlie Kirk and his assassination.
The more we understand and appreciate Jesus' sensitivity toward us, the more sensitivity is going to grow in us toward other people. So it's not a gifting issue, it's a gospel issue. And this is the only thing I'm going to say in the sermon about the events of this week, specifically with Charlie Kirk. This kind of gospel sensitivity could have spared our country a lot of pain this week. And I don't just mean in the murder, in the things that led up to and even followed in the aftermath of that assassination.
If we just had some gospel sensitivity, Charlie Kirk would still be here today. Oh my goodness. Is that gospel sensitivity? That doesn't seem very sensitive. He says it. He's had a scolding voice on it, I think, a little bit. Like he's a little annoyed. It sounds like he's got to even talk about Charlie Kirk, but he's like, I'll say it though. I'll leave this 30-second clip in my sermon because I'm going to say something. But worst case scenario, he's saying Charlie Kirk didn't have gospel sensitivity. I watched it a number of times. I watched the full context. Best case scenario, and this is probably what he's saying, is that the person who shot Charlie Kirk did not have gospel sensitivity. What a weird category to bring into this. What an odd thing. He starts, and I don't have the whole clip, but he starts with Jesus gives us this model of compassion, and that's gospel sensitivity right there. Now, why do you use gospel as an adjective for everything? Why don't you just say Jesus was sensitive? The gospel is the good news that Christ has taken the wrath of God for those who believe in him so we can be in a right relationship with God. It's good news. It's the power of God to salvation. It's what Christ has done. That gospel sensitivity. How about you just say Christ was sensitive? And if someone else was sensitive, then I mean, I don't even know how to work that in. I guess if the person who shot Charlie Kirk was sensitive, Charlie Kirk would still be here. Maybe the person who shot Charlie Kirk was a murderer, and maybe it wasn't about sensitivity. Maybe, I mean, that kind of implies Charlie Kirk himself was, he was doing the kinds of things that the Pharisees were doing. He was doing the kinds of things the enemies of Jesus was doing. Jesus had sensitivity towards them. Of course, Jesus didn't always, but that's kind of the implication. Jesus was sensitive towards people, towards the people who didn't like him. And if this shooter would have just been sensitive to Charlie Kirk, so where does that put Charlie Kirk? What is he then? He's saying very provocative things. You just got to be sensitive around that. It's like, goodness gracious, what a bad, that goes up in like the top 20 bad sermon analogies right there. And I don't have any compassion though for Jim Davis. I have no gospel sensitivity, whatever that is, for Jim Davis on this from the Gospel Coalition. He's on the board for the Gospel Coalition because the guy should know better. If it's like his first sermon, or like he's a young pastor, he's trying to make an application. It's just disjoint. Okay, I get it. All right. We can cut slack, but not for Jim Davis. Sorry. Okay. We're going to move on here. Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary has decided that it's going to change the name of its Kingdom Diversity Center. That's right. So now it is being called the Revelation 7-9 Initiative. Now, for those who listen to this podcast at any length, I have covered the Kingdom Diversity Center I don't know how many times. But the Kingdom Diversity Center was basically trying to reach quotas at Southeastern. Now, this is something that was denied by them, but they literally had pie charts on the website of how many students were white and male compared to others and that kind of thing. So they're changing it now. And by the way, to get into the Kingdom Diversity Center, to get the scholarship, you not only had to be a minority, you had to be a certain kind of minority. You had to be basically an activist. Those were the questions that were asked. Are you spreading the good news of diversity, basically? Well, here's Southeastern changing it to, because diversity, that's kind of a dirty word now, right? I mean, we're on to it now. It took a few years, but people are on to it. Now they realize when they see diversity, I don't know if that means what you think it means. So now it's the Revelation 7-9 Initiative. I think that's an admission right there that I think that what they've been doing has probably been at least detected. Now, what is the revolution? It is revolutionary, but the Revelation 7-9 Missions Initiative, what does it do? It's a program that provides additional funding, for minority students who are going on their first missions trip. The initiative has an application process for students to follow. Students of African descent, Asian descent, Hispanic. There's nothing on here for anything European. This is, this is, how is this different, really, in principle? Not really different. Now, there's no pie chart here that I can see that's telling you how much progress they're making in diversifying the campus, even though, why else would you be doing this? What's the point? Why for only those students? So there you go. That is the Revelation 7-9 Initiative. I view it this way. You can run, but you can't hide. Come on, guys. We all know what you're doing here. It's just a rebrand. That's all it is. Christianity Today. According to Megan Basham at the Daily Wire, I'm glad to see the Daily Wire as an outlet that's not evangelical, using the platform to focus on an evangelical concern. Evangelical magazine, Christianity Today, takes over $1 million from abortion funder. And if you read the article, it talks about since 2022, the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation has become a major patron of CT, donating well over $1 million to the outlet. Record show, including in the contributions, is $400,000 for general operating, $75,000 to develop a mobile app, and $600,000 to cover U.S. elections. Oh, that's interesting. Cover U.S. elections. This makes Hewlett one of the magazine's top disclosed donors. So This is all I'll say about this. I mean, it goes into depth of kind of why they're talking about this and so forth and so on. Canon Press offered to purchase the outlet for $10 million, right? Anthony Bradley was saying, how where'd they get $10 million? Well, it's called You Take a Loan Out. That's what it's called. So Christianity Today, though, is the premier neo-evangelical magazine. It has been for a long time, associated with Carl Henry and Billy Graham. It goes back to the 50s, or is it late 40s, early 50s? And this is a magazine that has been sort of taking the temperature, if you will, of where evangelicals are at least the more influential ones. And I know that throughout the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it became more and more watered down, less and less theological content, less and less church history and those kinds of things, more and more of the kinds of things that tend to sell magazines, the pop culture and all that. And today it's Russell Moore's the one who's in charge of it, and it's basically leftist. Well, this would have been interesting, I suppose, if Canon Press would have taken it over, Doug Wilson being the in charge of Christianity Today, more or less, or having a strong influence there. But of course, they rejected that offer. And in the whole story about this entire ordeal, it is found out that actually the $1 million came from this foundation. Now, the one of the people who works for Christianity Today, who does work for them, decided to weigh in on this and to say, well, look, there's other organizations that take money from this foundation. Even apparently the Heritage Foundation has taken some money from the Hewlett, I believe it was the Hewlett Foundation, if I'm not mistaken, right? I got to make sure I'm getting that right. I'm going to actually, as I'm speaking, I'm going to go back in my timeline because I know I interacted with it. But essentially saying that it wasn't that foundation. They've taken money from foundations that also support abortion. Because guess what? A lot of the major foundations in this country happen to support abortion. It's kind of like what you do in the elite circles. It's actually part of like charity work in their minds. I know it's sick. I know it's disgusting. That's just kind of the way it is, unfortunately. Mike Cosper. So he said the Federalist Society, Heritage, Ethics, and Public Policy accepted dirty money from Hewlett, he says. They also accepted money. Now, here's the interesting thing to me about all this. Those outlets obviously are not overtly Christian. They might have Christians working there, but they are not Christian institutions. And so to use them as moral credibility, to say, look at these more conservative leaning institutions, they've taken money. To me, that says that Christianity Today, or at least the mind of some, is looking and taking moral guidance from these now supposedly conservative institutions. Now, that's a funny thing for Mike Cosper to say, given that oftentimes Christianity Today, I look at them as wanting to curry favor with the left. But now they're put on the defensive over this, and they're trying to point fingers at right-wing outlets that also do this. Well, maybe those right-wing outlets shouldn't. I don't know. Here's the big problem. Here's the big issue. This is what it all boils down to in my mind. What's the money there for? That's the question. What's the money there for? $600,000 to cover U.S. elections. Okay, why? If you want to say that the wealth of the wicked is stored up for the righteous, and therefore we can take money from organizations that also do bad things, okay, I'll go with you on that. So if you're directly contradicting what this organization does, and you somehow got them to give you money, I mean, that's pretty impressive. I think Russell Moore used he tried to make that argument with the evangelical immigration table. It's like, well, if they want to pay Christians, that's great. Hey, what if we were getting Soros money? I mean, wouldn't that be good? It's like, well, if you were using it against Soros, that'd be kind of dumb for Soros, but yeah, sure. But I just don't think these foundations are that dumb, right? Like, I would be more suspicious that the Hewlett Foundation is giving money to organizations like Heritage and the Federalist Society because they're trying to do what? What are they trying to do? What are they trying to do at Christianity Today? I think Mike Cosper might have stumbled onto something here, and it might not be the point he wants. It may be, and this is an easier way to explain all this, that this particular foundation, along with other foundations like the Rockefeller Foundation, are giving money to supposedly conservative outlets to turn them towards the left. And if you can do it a fraction, you can sway an election, okay? Why would they have to give a lot of money to leftist outlets? I mean, they keep them going, but look, they're already in the bank. You already got their votes. If you want to shift things, you better start having influence at more conservative leaning places. Christianity Today, that's prime target right there. Christians have traditionally, evangelicals have looked at this institution as trustworthy, And now you just subvert it a bit. Keep subverting it and making it more left, more left. Eventually, you get evangelicals, enough of them to vote left, and you've won yourself a presidential election. I'm not saying that there's a document purporting this. I'm not accusing them of it. I'm just saying, why would that strategy not make more sense? Why would that be a paradigm that wouldn't make more sense of the information in front of us? Right? The same suspicion that Megan has about Christianity today, you could also have about heritage. You could say, oh, what are they doing there? So, in other news, the Archbishop of Canterbury is Sarah Mullally. She is a woman, as you can see. Now, this has been going on, since the 70s or so in the Anglican Church, women becoming priests and so forth. Well, now it's the Archbishop. Now, I mean, this is a moment, guys. This is a moment. And here's a whole story on it from the BBC that Archbishop of York, Stephen Cottrell, took on most of Mr. Welby's responsibilities. Let's see, there was an interim move. There's a scandal. Okay, let's get past this. Women were first ordained. Okay, so I said 70s. Why did I say 70s? I think I was thinking of, I must have been thinking about the Episcopalians or something. Okay, women were first ordained priests in the Anglican Church in 1994. While the first female bishop appointments followed 20 years later in 2014. That's not 2014. And it took us, just 12 years to get the Archbishop to be a woman. Okay. In line with the tradition, so it goes through the process. This is what she says. She talks about the horrific violence of Thursday's attack on a synagogue in Manchester. She said, we are witnessing hatred that rises up through fractures across our communities. She added, we then as a church have a responsibility to be a people who stand with the Jewish community against anti-Semitism in all its forms. Hatred and racism of any kind cannot be allowed to tear us apart. I know what this is a difficult position, the English church. I mean, it's an official church of a country, but now it's a multicultural liberal country, and with Muslims being the majority in many areas that are influential. So it's like you got to be the archbishop for all of them, which it's so silly. It's absolutely silly. In an age that craves certainty and tribalism, Anglican offers something quieter but stronger. That's probably the problem, is they're too quiet. She promised to confront safeguarding failures which had left a deep legacy of deep harm and mistrust. We must be willing to have light shone on our actions regardless of it's done, guys. It's so done. The Anglican Church. Oh, man. This is, the quieter female voice that sings Kumbaya when there's violence happening. And believe me, look, if I was a Christian, or if I was part of the Jewish community in Great Britain, I would be pretty cautious right now. I would be, what's the Muslim, what do you even call it? Islamification of Great Britain. That would scare me just because of seeing the pattern in other places. And in the face of this, to have the Archbishop, the leader supposedly of the national church, to just have this quieter, very just studied disposition where we can all get along, multicultural. We can just respect one another. Let's get, it's a nice thought to have respect for one. It's not happening though. So, what are you going to do about it? What should she do? Well, step down, because she's not fit to be, according to Paul, to be in that office. But if it was a male in that office, what should you do? I don't know. Maybe use the trumpet you have to go full bore press on the fact that your country, that's supposed to be Christian in its character and identity, is flipping overnight. And it's because of the policies of politicians. And they need to you're going to have to get political. There's no other way to be responsible in that kind of an office. I don't see it, at least. But of course, that's not going to happen. And that means, I think, there's weakness. And when there's weakness, people, they won't be leading anything. It's just sad to me. It's just sad. See that once influential church in a country that was the biggest missionary sending country in the world to go to this level. It's so sad. Now, lest you think that things are better in the Roman Catholic Church, Pope Leo blesses a block of ice. I kid you not. Pope Leo decided to bless a block of ice in a bizarre protest against Trump and the GOP climate deniers. So everyone who's saying, oh, Pope Leo, I heard this from everyone. Oh, all the trad cats. He's so based. He's so good. Like, this is nothing like Francis. He's trad, man. He's trad on marriage. Okay, well, he just blessed a block of ice in a dramatic display of some symbolism, according to the IB Times. Pope Leo blessed a block of ice to challenge climate change deniers and urge political leaders to act. He has no problem getting political. Neither does the Archbishop, by the way, as long as it's on the left. Multiculturalism is not the answer for Great Britain, and neither is blessing blocks of ice for the world. And then we have Pope Leo. Also, he blesses Dick Durban, the Democrat pro-abortion, very pro-abortion senator. He says, let's see. Pope Leo responds to controversy of the Chicago Cardinals' plans to honor he backs up a cardinal who's doing this. Plans to honor a Catholic U.S. senator who supports legalized abortion, saying that the senator's record should be considered in its totality and that Americans should search together for the truth on ethical issues. I'm pretty sure that he came from Chicago, this Pope Leo. So, this is something he would be very intimately familiar with. Several U.S. bishops condemned Chicago Cardinal Blaise Kupik's plan to honor U.S. Senator Richard Durbin, Democrat Illinois, with a Lifetime Achievement Award for his work surrounding immigration policy, despite his pro-abortion. So here's the message, guys, from the Pope, from the supposed vicar of Christ of the Catholic Church. It is more important to honor someone who has been destroying the country through pro-illegal immigration type policies than it is to condemn abortion. I mean, I don't know how else you read it. I really don't. Like, I'll let you Catholics deal with that. I don't know. There's no way to sugarcoat this. And for all you who are hopeful, I get it, but not happening, guys. The lone bulwark is still the evangelicals. In national news, moving towards national news here, illegal alien who ran Des Moines school district had long history of criminal charges. Have you heard of this? There was an illegal alien who was literally the superintendent of the Des Moines Independent Community School District. Now, how did you get to that point is crazy, but he's got a criminal history. Democrats have been protesting his removal. This is nuts. He's from, is it Guyana? And he came to Queens. I mean, his roots in this area are very shallow. His roots in the country are shallow. And this is just crazy to me. So this is one of the issues with, I mean, when you have illegal migrants that are rising to those positions of authority in blue areas, then I mean, there's areas that are just gone, basically, right? I mean, this is what I said. I've been saying this for a while with localism. Like, it's important to be localist and regionalist because America will only exist in pockets if things continue. It already does. Now, there's some big pockets, but when you have a birth rate that's 1.6, not replacements 2.1, when you even during the Trump administration, I mean, stuff like this has flown under the radar for this long. You have illegal migrants getting into positions like this of influence. When you have Muslims who are chanting at their pro-Palestinian, anti-Israel rallies, death to America, that kind of thing. When you have places like Minneapolis that don't even look like America anymore, neither does Dearborn, Michigan. You're not really in America when you go to some of these places. You're somewhere else. And there doesn't seem to be there's obviously is a political solution for these things, but not one that people are willing to do, or one that, and it's not just willing. That's the most thing you hear. It's like, oh, these people just aren't willing. We also have a system of checks and balances, and it does create a lot of clashes. You have to have like a super mandate and a lot of political will. And you have to have the ability to be able to go toe to toe with all the other levels of authority that are standing up against you while winning elections, while being able to come back in 4 years or whenever it is and say, I did a good job, elect me again. That's incredibly hard in the United States, incredibly hard. And we have to be realistic about this. America is going to exist, and it already does in some ways in certain regions, but other regions are not going to be the United States that really bears any resemblance to anything that you grew up with or know. We'll get to some comments, but a few more stories. County to formally apologize for slavery at NAACP request. And Maryland County plans to officially apologize for slavery. Okay. Well, that's great. It's long overdue, right? Yeah, I don't know, man. I feel like the slaves who can't, I think they died. It is that far overdue. Like, you can't even apologize to them anymore. They're not around. We're going to apologize for this county's role in supporting and enforcing the institution of slavery. As a direct descendant of local enslavers, I understand that there is no way to undo the past, but I cannot end my time in office without responding to this request with an acknowledgement and an apology, right? Of all the things, right? Of all the things right now. Now, this is what I'll say about this. If you understand the history of slavery in this country, especially in Maryland and Virginia, where it happened very early, it's very organic, right? You didn't have the places did not have the local power to even stop it if they wanted to. It wasn't a thought. It was more than the Wild West. Yes, you had communities forming, you did, but you had a frontier and you had just a lot of unregulated activity in general. You also had indentured servants that had come over and were part of the initial settlement. I don't know if they'll ever apologize to that because, John Davenport, my relative who came over in 1619, was also an indentured servant. Are you going to apologize to him? He came into Virginia, but still. To me, this is obviously the woke stuff, but it shows a pathology when someone does this. It shows a self-hating pathology that you want to focus on things that are negative in the history, and you want to take responsibility for things that really aren't yours to take responsibility for. There wasn't a mechanism for stopping that in the initial stages. All right, so you continued it though, and eventually it did end, right? Is it still going on? I didn't know that, right? So it did end. It did stop. There were political things that happened, including a war that eventually led to, through a series of events, the ending of this practice. And of course, the beginning of a whole bunch of new, very destructive practices like generational welfare and industrial patterns that give you sweatshop labor and give you, slave labor goes into the cobalt on your phones, and a prison system that mirrors slavery in some ways. And there you just go on and on. So it's like, did we get to a better place? Someone was complaining, well, slavery is bad because look, all the families that got broken apart. Now you go back and you do the study. This was something that was more rare than we're led to believe oftentimes today, but okay. Are the descendants of slaves just known today for having very intact families? Is that their reputation now? Or is it that the farther away we've gotten from the institution of slavery, the more broken their families have become? The stats tell you a different story. So I just think, what are you going to do? Start apologizing why don't you apologize for the present conditions, right? Of the descendants of these slaves that are in things like generational welfare and policies that have encouraged fatherlessness and high crime areas where innocent people die and they're not policed strongly enough because you think that's racist. That seems like that would be more practical. And that's something actually you're more directly responsible for in 2025. But no, it's the C.S. Lewis thing. You always want to apologize for other people's sins, as he said. Other people's sins, not my sins, because it makes me look righteous. It's just one big virtue signal. And it's still going on. And you need to know this stuff is still going on. Those blue regions that were hyper blue did not become red. They are still blue. The radicalism of 2020, it still exists. It's still in those regions. And it's not going away anytime soon, okay? That's the nature of ideology. What happened in 2020 was unique because you had all the institutions, including a whole bunch of quote unquote normies, people, even non-political people, all lining up to say the same thing. The stars were aligned. Everyone was, but a lot of these people that went along with it were going along with it. They weren't ideologues themselves. The true ideologues, though, they never went away. And that's the nature of ideology. I actually don't think it's worthwhile to really argue with an ideologue. They're blind. You try to go after some of their followers who might be just going along with it. It's like false religion, right? Why would you argue with someone who's at the head of a false religion? Because you want some of the few followers that might still be kind of on the fence or whatever, like they're not totally haven't bought in. You want to get the message out to them. But you realize you're talking to someone who is ingrained in a deeply deceptive system that is totally reinforced by pride, and it's just, unless the Lord does a conversion process, and I think the same thing about ideology, you're not going to get anywhere. You can pile up as much evidence as you want. The evidence doesn't really become compelling. And we have, sadly, still local regions in this country, many of them in the urban areas especially, where this kind of ideology is still predominant, hasn't gone away. And it comes out in weird places, like Eric Doherty. Is that Doherty? Doherty. I think that's how you say it. He is a Democrat who is running for Virginia Attorney General. He's a nominee, at least, for the Democrats. And let's see. Actually, no, hold on. Eric, I got this wrong. I'm going to recant right now. I read it totally wrong. Eric is the guy who's reporting on this. So sorry, Eric. My apologies. You're a good guy. And I probably didn't pronounce your name right. So Eric Doherty is reporting on this. The story is, I thought is when I said it, I was like, I don't remember that being his name. It's not his name. His name is Jay Jones. Jay Jones, the Virginia Attorney General nominee, at least from the Democrats, fantasized about shooting Republican officials, their children, and urinating on their graves. That's just very nice. It seems the party of love and all things sunshine, flowers, and just apologizing for things like slavery because they're so kind. They're just the nicest people, right? And just wanting to murder little kids on top of it. It's just great. Now, here's the thing about it. This would just be a disgraced politician who was found out. I saw the texts. They're terrible. He doubled down in the texts. Well, the Democrats, at this point at least, maybe that'll change, they're standing behind him. What happens if he wins? What do you do then? What do you do in a country? What do you do in a state, really, is the better way to ask this, where someone like that can still get elected into office? I don't know. You're talking, I mean, people felt this with the Charlie Kirk situation. It feels like we should be in a war, but we're not. It's an ideological war. It's technological. Every once in a while, there's it's a political assassination or something, but like there's no two sides fighting in the streets yet. But a guy like this gets elected who fantasizes about killing the children of his opponent because they're little fascists, apparently, or Nazis, whatever he said. They're just being raised that way. Tell me how you're any better than the worst of the worst kinds of Nazis who carried out executions in, the ordinary men who went out into the woods and mowed down children. I mean, how are you any better than that? I mean, they obviously did the deed, and Jay Jones hasn't. But what's keeping them back? I mean, a lot of things. But what if there wasn't thing? What if it was government policy? I think we all feel it and we all know it, that there's a sizable group of people in this country that would have no moral qualms about killing half the population. They already abort their babies. What's the problem with killing people who are outside the womb, who are their political enemies? I mean, the babies hold you back from doing what you want to do. These Republicans hold you back from doing what you want to do fully. So why don't we just kill them? I think we feel that. I think that's the sort of the time bomb people are sitting on. Is we're wondering, a lot of people, regular, ordinary, decent Americans are wondering, when does it come to the point that they actually start really shooting? I don't have an answer for that. I mean, you hope that you never have war. You hope you never have shooting, but you can't have guys that would you ever fantasize about killing the children of your Democratic opponent in an election if you were a Republican? I mean, it's just, that's so outside of my thinking. It's hard to comprehend, to be quite honest with you. Why someone would think that. It's just so against our identity as Americans, who we are. Partisanship is dead if the Democratic Party backs this guy up. Virginia's out in the bywater. It's not one of those states that's kind of like less significant. It's Virginia, for goodness sakes. Most of the DC Beltway is in that state. We're talking about Virginia here. So see what happens, guys. But this is like, these are the kinds of things when the historians go back and they start saying, well, yeah, what led to the Great War, that second Civil War in America? And they're looking back and they're saying, well, these are the kinds of things that become flashpoints. Charlie Kirk assassination, Jay Jones, and then being backed up by the Democratic Party. These are the kinds of things that become flashpoints. So read the signs of the times, guys. Okay, I'll take some questions and then I'll finish it up with some commentary about. I'll give you some good news, and we'll go through just a few other more commentary type stories. They're not really stories, just opinions people put out there I wanted to get to. Let's start here. Javier Oliva says, conservative, what is there to conserve? Do you know what time it is? Yes, I very much do. I think by the last bit, hopefully you understand I know what time it is. There's a lot to conserve. This is one of the things that I've had this conversation a few times with people, actually, where they've listened to so many podcasts that are, and I'm not saying, Javier, this is where you're coming from. I don't know where you picked this up. I just know that others I've talked to have listened to so many black pilling podcasts that it's just it's taken over their mind. And like, you're so used to just negative everything all the time. You're not used to even considering the good things that are still out there, which there are a lot. And I think our constitutional system is, even though it has been we're post-constitutional in many ways. I mean, I just talk about the anti-federalists and how they were prophetic in many respects, but it's still our greatest generation of men probably ever formed this document to be stable. And a lot of the things that we still cherish are from that time. We still cherish somewhat of a federal system, even if it's been slowly over time, progressively evaporating. It's still something that it's part of our DNA, that there's the local can stand up to the national or the general. We definitely still have a lot of the landmarks and places that, and a lot of statues came down, but a lot of statues stayed up, and they remind us about the higher aspirations and the heroism of America, who we are, our identity as a people. I think we're going to see a lot more of that next year with the celebrations that will ensue. I think we still have a general Anglo-Protestant ethos. There's people who live out in the heartland who I tell these stories on my podcast, and it's like, it doesn't affect them really. They're farmers. They're doing their thing. Things haven't changed there too much. And their 2020 even didn't affect them all that much. Those places do still exist. And there's good people who live in those places, decent, ordinary Americans who still use guns for hunting and not for shooting people. And they're in a society, in a community that pretty much agrees. They're more, everyone's a conservative. Everyone's right-leaning. Everyone is Christian on some variety. There's a lot of the country. If you travel, you start seeing this. There's a lot of the country that still is like this. A lot of the violence, a lot of the revolutionary things that happen in urban and to some extent suburban areas, right? They're not seeing it happen there as much. And there's a strong enough tradition that they can still somewhat protect their kids who will likely grow up to be farmers from it. I still see, you can fall a lot farther. Study the history of Rome and how decadent it became, right? We have a lot farther that we can fall. There's a lot more immoral things. We still value kids in this country. We still think even the most liberal people tend to have this exception. That's why Jay Jones, what he said, and if the Democratic Party backs him up, this is a true kind of revolutionary moment. But in general, even the Democrats will make exceptions for kids. Like, oh yeah, like, okay, adults can be engaged in this terrible behavior, but yeah, we want to be careful with the kids. It's a winning issue in many places. Corrupting kids is, unless you're in a very deep blue area, is just not seen as a good positive thing. What is that about us? That's something that's not all countries are like that with kids, but we value this innocence in America. We even have a rating system for our movies, for goodness sakes. I could go on and on and on and on, but there are so much that's still left to fall that has not fallen yet. It can get really bad, guys. It's not as bad as it can possibly get. And we have someone in the White House who values Americanism and so forth. If that's it's not an ism, but the American character. So I actually think that there's a lot of tradition, and one of the things that we ought to do, and this is one of my concerns about, because I'm just a concerned bro now, right? About younger generations. Everyone's talking about Gen Z. I'm kind of starting to look at Gen Alpha, to be honest with you. And I'm seeing that like these trends that have carried through millennial, Gen Z, Gen Alpha is going to be insane, guys. Like we'll see what happens. Obviously, history is so interesting because converging forces can change things. But if you just throw everything out that the boomers stood for, you're throwing out a lot of tradition too. You're not just throwing out the liberalism. I actually, that's why I advocate against the waves, Christian order in a liberal age. Get rid of the liberalism. If you throw out things like good manners, showing up on time and having a decent handshake, treating women the way that you should with respect, treating them as different, approaching them in a dignified way. If you just start normalizing all kinds of profanity because, well, the boomers still upheld some of those standards, so we just got to rip them down, then you are the revolutionary. Whether you know you are or not, you are the revolutionary. You are still ripping down standards. You say those standards don't matter as much as this over here or something. Okay, this maybe there's things that matter more. Maybe the liberalism is more damaging than some of these things. But you are an agent for the modern impulse. When you start just ripping down everything wholesale, it's a revolutionary instinct without really thinking about it. And anything that's boomer is bad. If you do that, then so long all the good things that the boomers were able to conserve, whether they knew they were doing it or not. Because when we grow up, we do adopt things, even if we're rebels, we do adopt things that our parents gave to us. It's a process. Go watch or listen to my speech on tradition. It just sort of happens organically. So the boomers did retain some things from their parents that were good things. Hard work's a good thing. Yes, the conditions are difficult, but you know what? I think of the greatest generation. I was close to my grandfather. I mean, I can't imagine what it was like to have a Dust Bowl, to have a Great Depression, to then have to go get drafted into World War II, to come back and have your cotton crops fail, to have to move far away from your home, to not get married until you were 30 because your life has been so upended. It's like, to me, I look at the greatest generation and I'm like, okay, this is why they were called that. They endured so much hardship. Yeah, it's hard to be a Zoomer right now. I mean, housing price is extremely expensive. Yeah, if you're in the dating game, it is hard. But this bitterness against boomers isn't going to actually help you overcome any of that stuff. I'd say, look back for examples from history that you can feel inspiration from. Look at your life as if it is in the providence of God, something that he's put you on earth for a time as this. You have a mission. And you absolutely do your best. And men don't make excuses. Men realize the circumstances, but they don't make excuses for them. They deal with what they have and they go forward. That's what a man does. There's a lot of boys running around. Now lest I get in trouble from the people who think I need to just, every time I talk about any critique of men, I have to also critique women. There is a lot of loose women running around. There's a lot of women who don't know the first thing about what it means to be a woman. This is something that we have become very deracinated, but we still have retained many good things. And it's good to identify those things, tap into those things. If you feel so disconnected, get to know what happened under your feet, start reading some books, start going to historical places, read the signs, go to church, learn theology, learn the founding documents, fill your mind with good things that can help you recapture that tradition. That's the moral. That's the white pill. That's what you have to do. And Matt says, for $50, goodness gracious, Matt. Well, that was very kind of you. Support for date night. Yeah, my wife and I, we do date night every week. I guess man, with $50, what could I do? I mean, this is going to be a Texas Roadhouse week, I think. That's what I'm thinking. I know some of you guys are like, you're looking down your nose at me. Look, I like the Texas Roadhouse. We like our Five Guys. We like our Texas Roadhouse. But the key with Five Guys is when you go, you have to get the little hamburgers, right? Because it's so expensive to just get a full-size hamburger unless you're really hungry. And then you order one fry, not two, and you get a small drink. Just keep going and refilling it. You end up around the $30 mark between the two of you. Now, some of you, that's not a date. That's just Five Guys. Okay. Well, that's fine. I mean, you can go to, we have some nice places around here, but those are like, That's like the once in a quarter place, like once every half year place. Every 6 months, maybe we'll go to a nicer restaurant. My wife likes that, but you break the bank. So it's so expensive to eat out. $50 goes a long way though. That'll get you a really nice meal at Texas Roadhouse these days, which is kind of like my place of choice. I don't do the Applebee's. I don't do the TGI Fridays. I don't do the Cracker Barrel, guys. I'm sorry. I just don't. But anyway, Matt, thank you. Thank you. Very kind of you. You are helping my marriage there. All right. R.M. McIntyre suggested we are already in a bleeding Kansas phase. That's a good way to put it. Although there's differences because we're less regional now. We need to become more regional, but we're less regional. We're more in our online kind of communities. But Dr. Bob, don't black pill. The spiritual gifts remain for today. Faith, hope, and love. Don't forget hope. Amen, Dr. Bob. YouTube Cosmic Trees says YouTube after taking $20. Thanks, Matt. All right. Well, it's 30%, says Matt. So $15. Yeah. Well, I'm not going to get into my tipping advice. You do need to tip though. If you're a Christian, especially if you leave a track, you better tip. Matt, you quit going to Five Guys. Yeah. Well, I don't know. What about my strategy though? Does my strategy, if it's just the two of you, I mean, and it lands in that $30 range. I mean, I feel like I don't put Five Guys in the fast food category. To me, like I like a good burger. To me, that's like, a good date is going out and getting a milkshake from In-N-Out. A good date. Now Wendy's is not a good date. Wendy's, that's not even fuel. That's garbage, right? And Wendy's is one of the best ones. McDonald's, forget about it, right? Like those are fast food. But, Taco Bell is different than Chipotle, like Wendy's is different than Five Guys. That's how I view it. In my area, Five Guys is kind of the way. Yeah, it is expensive. $18. Man, Cosmic Treason's paying $18 for Five Guys. You're doing something wrong, man. You're doing something wrong. You should be coming in. You should be landing around, I would say, like I guess if you're getting a fry for yourself, maybe it is 18. That's true. Yeah. Huh. I guess it could be. You're right. I just say go small on all of it and eat a lot of peanuts. Look, they lose money on me. They lose money. I walk in there. I eat so many peanuts. It's like, there should be a picture of me. Like, don't go to Five Guys. Okay. All right. A few more questions. And then we got to get to the rest of the podcast here for the third half, right? The third half. That was something that, I used to hear as like Haney and Colmes. I used to say the third half. Cosmic Treason, do you agree? Do you like the fourth turning theory? And do you agree with much of it? I've never read it. Everyone just tells me I need to read the fourth turning. Like I picked it up. I thumbed through it. I've skimmed it. Friends of mine have read it. I don't know. I don't know. History. I don't know that history works that way, to be quite honest. You could try. I think history has so many converging forces that make unexpected things happen. So I'm more humble as a historian when I look back at things. I don't know that it fits, but there are definitely trends, and history does often rhyme. So there's something to it, but I hold it very loosely. Conceptual Clarity says, what happened to the gay marriage enthusiast named Timothy Dalrymple, who was publisher at Christianity Today? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I do remember him, though. Okay, let's finish the podcast here, and then we'll do some questions. We're going to talk about Third Way, guys. We're definitely going to talk about Third Way. We already talked about those reactions to Tim Keller's death, and that is going to play into my discussion of Third Way. But before we get there, a few things I wanted to highlight real quick. Some interesting pieces that I think would be good for you to read. Psychobabble, which is hannahspear.substack.com. The name of her blog is Psychobabble. The cult claim against MAGA claps is under scrutiny. So I'm not going to get to the whole thing. There was a particular, the rise of left-wing violence. This is what I want to talk about. So she says in this that, so whenever the rise of left-wing violence is brought up, the rebuttal is, but right-wing terrorism is the majority. Have you ever heard this? This is the basis upon which the Biden administration targeted ordinary, decent Americans. That line is repeated endlessly in media and academia, and it usually rests on one shaky foundation: the Cato Institute's 2024 study of foreign-born terrorism in the United States. This study is paraded as proof that right-wing violence is the larger threat. The study excludes the bulk of contemporary left-wing violence because most Antifa anarchists and eco-terrorists actors are U.S. citizens. And so this is the one of the thing I found interesting that she wrote about this. Incels as right-wing. Incels, meaning I at first thought this just meant involuntarily celibate, but I'm realizing now this is almost like a cult. This is like people who are just very, very bitter. They tend to be very ideological. And I mean, maybe some of you have used the term to describe yourself. I'm involuntary celibate, but now you're seeing what the term is being applied to. And it's like guys who are in these right-wing echo chambers. They think they're right-wing, at least. I've never bought that they're right-wing or that these echo chambers are right-wing, but that's what they think. And they think they're the right of everyone. They're ultra red-pilled and all of this, but they're not really conserving tradition, though. They're not. I mean, that's what right-wing in an American context has typically meant. You're for hierarchy, and that being mostly the reflection of the natural order distilled through tradition over time as applied in your specific context, which is Anglo-Protestant in the United States. And I don't see anything traditional about these guys. They're revolutionary. They want to, if you hear them talk, and it's like they want to destroy things and rip things up and so forth. Anyway, several of the source data sets classify incel attackers as right-wing. Yet incels are not conservative nationalists. They are socially alienated, nihilistic men whose ideology is more antisocial than political. Amen. Amen. A man so embittered at being outside the social contract that he lashes out violently cannot be mapped in a straight line to right-wing beliefs. This is 100% true. On the contrary, the so-called red pill community is overwhelmingly socially liberal, fighting institutions rigged against them. Yes, and the more you get into this and the more you'll find out, so a lot of the social views are not Christian conservative at all. Just because they're bitter and the liberal order is one of the things they're bitter about doesn't make them right-wing or Christian or conservative or any of that. Anti-government does not equal conservative. Lone actors labeled sovereign citizens or anti-government extremists often get lumped in with right-wing violence. But hostility to the state has historically been an anarchist position, not a conservative one. Amen. So I thought that was a particularly intriguing point in this article that I think merited some more examination. That some of this data, some of these people that have committed acts of violence, are they really right-wing? And what is right-wing? What does that mean? Right? If it means typically it's been at conservative, I think that's changing. But if right-wing still means what it used to mean 5 minutes ago, then a lot of the guys who are being classified as right-wing are not necessarily right-wing. Your lone shooters who have, like, for example, was Dylan Roof right-wing? To go back to an obvious example, everyone remembers. I read his manifesto. It was very white supremacy type language. It was very ideological. It was very black-pilled. There's no way out, right? The whole plan to go to the Northwest and make it white, that's not working. It was just like there's no route that's open and available to me. And this kid goes up and decides to just murder some people, right? And that's the world he was living in, was this world of where violence was just normalized. There's a lot of video game type overplaying video games type stuff represented in this. And I just don't see that what she's saying, social alienation, being right-wing. Right-wing typically has meant very community involved, very focused on the general welfare of the people you represent and owe something to and are thankful for and identify with. So when you start identifying with an antisocial revolutionary black-pilled group, I don't think you're any longer anything that could be considered right-wing. It's not MAGA at that point. It's something else, whether or not you previously were considered yourself MAGA. So I thought that was an interesting, so when you hear that accusation, you have to make that distinction. There was a good article too that I think is worth highlighting from the Abbeville Institute by James Rutledge Roche. Half the truth is often a great lie. And he highlights 2 articles that Clyde Wilson wrote. They're short: Hitler's New Fans and the South and the Alt-Right at Reckoning. I'm not going to read this whole article, but I do commend it to you. If you want to understand what's going on with sort of the rise of trying to a revisionism, that some of it is just so intellectually insulting. It's just, to me, it's amazing it gets traction, but it does. And I think this article explains why that might be. And it also gives some counterpoints that I think are worth mentioning. But Clyde Wilson weighing in on this issue is no small thing. Clyde Wilson is probably still the most premier Southern historian still living. He is the John C. Calhoun expert. But I would say on Southern history in general, he's the guy, right? He is very prominent and very respected. And I've had the privilege of knowing him now for a number of years. He endorsed my book, Christianity and Social Justice. I've just really gained a lot from him. And in general, the guys at the Abbeville Institute, I remember Don Livingston, when all this stuff happened in 2017 and they were taking down all these monuments, I was like beside myself. And I remember emailing him. I probably still have the email. And I was just like, we got to do something, right? And of course, I'm in no position to do much of anything. And so calm, so not like the Archbishop of Canterbury, who would like to sing Kumbaya, but just realistic about it, right? These things, he's like, the long view, and being trained philosophically, which he was, the long view is you see these movements rise and fall. You see, history is never truly dead. These things end up coming back around sometimes, like the Renaissance or the Reformation. These figures, these movements, these ideas, they can be resurrected in different forms. And this is revolutionary ideology at work. And yes, I mean, there needs to be power to stop it and so forth. But, you do what you focus on the responsibilities that God has put in your way, in your life. And then if you're faithful in little, see what he makes you faithful in next. That's what you can do, right? What else can you do? If you're not in a position to do anything about it, you can give your opinion online. That's about it. And sir, you don't want that to take away from your other responsibilities, the actual ones God's given you. I don't know. It's just really calming, really soothing, and just realistic. And these guys are unapologetic. I mean, they're politically incorrect and all the rest, but I've just really benefited from some of the, I think, cooler heads at the Abbeville Institute. They have a long view of history. They have a Christian moral framework and understanding they're working from. And they can see through the ideology more than I think anyone else. They can see what the revolutionary movement is, what it looks like, how it operates, because they've seen it over and over again. And I've said before, some of the guys that, I'm not saying all, but some guys who even are going all pro Dabney and pro Robert Louis Dabney and Stonewall Jackson and the rest. I realized, like, initially I was like, oh, good, we're going to put up all these monuments again. Oh, good, and I started realizing, I think Dabney is a thorn in the eye of the left. Like, it's not like I have a rootedness in some of this history where I've read it, I appreciate it. I've gleaned identity and character from these people. I have a connection to my family. There's like all of these things matter to me. It's a real thing. It's not just a needle to poke in the eye of the left. And if America in general, if the founding fathers, if the Constitution, if our identity as who we are as a people just becomes like a America thing to poke in the eye of the left, then we have lost it. It's a positive thing. It's not just against our enemies, even though they don't like it. So anyway, I think it's a great blog to follow. And I thought that was a particularly good article. So I wanted to commend it to you. Some white pills, some encouraging things here that I wanted to let you know about the Trump administration. The federal judge rules public charter school violated church's First Amendment rights. A federal judge in Idaho ruled that a public charter school violated the church's First Amendment rights when it canceled a lease that allowed the church to hold Sunday services inside its gymnasium. The decision from the chief U.S. District Court Judge David Nye came in response to a lawsuit centering on a lease agreement between Truth Family Bible Church and Sage International. Now, you may wonder, what's Truth Family Bible Church doing in here? And this isn't directly related to the Trump administration. I'm not sure who appointed this judge, but Truth Family Bible Church happens to be where two of our speakers from the Music and Masculinity Retreat came from, one being the pastor, Danny Steinmeier, and the music minister, Mark Steinmeier. So this is directly related to our circles. And it says the website reported that when the lease was canceled last year, Sage International was applying for around $15 million in bonds to finance building upgrades. Attorneys for the state's bonding authority then flagged the church's lease as potential breach of Idaho's Blaine Amendment, which blocks religious organizations from receiving taxpayer money. Nye reportedly wrote in his ruling that the concern was a lapse in judgment, as Truth Family Bible Church would have only incidentally benefited from the bond-approved facilities with no funds being given directly to them. IHFA and Sage's motivation for terminating Truth Family's lease, whether reasonable or not, were still in violation of Truth Family's constitutional rights. So interesting. Now, if you're against incorporation, which I am, you look at these and you're like, well, yeah, the federal government shouldn't be involved in any of this, or the national government or whatever. Well, since they are, I'm glad that they are standing up for the rights there of Truth Family Bible Church in our beautiful Anglo-Protestant country here. And Nye agreed with each of the First Amendment claims. Okay, so we don't need to read more of this. Interesting article. Another encouraging thing. The Trump administration Trump himself has signed a memo labeling anti-Christian, anti-capitalist views as domestic terrorism indicators. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed a new security memorandum that identifies anti-Christian, anti-American views as indicators of radical left violence. It also identifies organizations with these common views alongside those with anti-capitalist and anti-Americanism views as domestic terror networks that the U.S. Joint Terrorism Task Force will now target to prevent potential crimes. This is very good. This is the complete 180 from the Biden administration, which targeted Christian nationalism. Now it's anti-Christianity is the target. Despite indicators that this is, let's see, the shooter acted alone in the Charlie Kirk thing. Mr. Trump and his supporters have blamed the attack on organized left-wing networks. In a statement published by the White House last Thursday, the president is going after the left wing and anti-Christian sentiment. I voted for this. If we're going to have a department that does these kinds of things, it might as well be going after the actual bad guys. Am I right? Let's go to some questions now, and we will end the podcast. Cosmic Treason says, incel is too broad a term because anybody who wants to be married would technically be classified as one based on its definition, but not really. The way it's actually applied to people, it means. No, I'm talking about using it as an identity, not as a classification, but that's what I thought it was at first. It was just a classification. But there's people who use it as an identity, okay? It's, for them, being an incel is like part of who they are. It's part of who they are. All right. We're going to talk. Let's see. There's not a lot of questions coming in. So I'm going to end the podcast with the final commentary. Now we get to the fourth half of the podcast on the third way, and then we'll be done. So what is the third way? I've talked about it so many times on the podcast, but I figure I'll play for you a few videos so you will know fully what the third way is.
So this isn't left, right, liberal, conservative. This is what did Jesus say? And I think to love our neighbor, the one who's different than us, is the most key question or choice for America's future.
All right, there you go. Jim Wallace, Sojourners. I mean, very left wing. He is a Democrat Party asset. There's no doubt. And yet here he is. It's not left, right. It's not left, right. There's this other thing, right? There's this third way, the way of Christ. Well, the way of Christ seems to be awfully Democrat, right? Here's J.D. Greer.
I always have to remind myself that Jesus' crucifixion was a joint project between the secular establishment on the left and the religious establishment on the right. The true gospel of Jesus ends up offending both of them, and both of them attack the gospel from different sides. See, the gospel offends the secular left by saying that Jesus is Lord of our bodies, for example, that you just can't decide for yourself what your personal rules are for sexual orientation or gender or marriage and calling that pride. The gospel challenges the secular left when it says that all human life is sacred. You can't just discard a human life in the womb because it's become inconvenient to you. The gospel offends the religious establishment on the right, however, when it tells us that we should be filled with grace and generosity, that we should respond to our secular leaders with submission and honor whenever we can. It challenges the religious establishment on the right when it says that we Christians are responsible not only for our own needs, but that God holds us responsible for the needs of others around us, even our enemies. It offends us when it tells us that God wants us to love the immigrant and the stranger and the vulnerable and to treat their needs like we would our own. Hear me, friend. If you are living in step with the gospel, you will make enemies of both the secular left and the religious right. And I'm not trying to say that left and right are equally evil or depraved. They're not. I'm just saying that the true gospel ends up offending them both. Notice verse 9, Jesus says these Jews were of the synagogue of Satan. People who were supposed to be God's receptacle.
Okay. And all God's people said, what in the world? The funny thing is the guys who want to some guys who want to chart a new path for the right they look at this and they're like, your terms are acceptable. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Right. But actual rooted right-wing instincts are, you actually do think you're born into a community with responsibilities and dependencies. And that means you have duties to your community, not just your family. It's broader than that. And so that's actually a very right-wing belief, but now it's framed. What J.D. Greear is critiquing seems like a combination of like revolutionary activity with, you said racism and like sort of a libertarian instinct of individualism. And it's just stereotype that he's knocking down. So I don't even think that's right wing, but what is going on there? It's like, well, they both don't like the gospel. And of course, when he says gospel, it's like Jim Davis. He's not talking about the actual gospel. He's talking about the, I don't even know. He's talking about Christianity, I guess, broadly speaking, the church. He's talking about Christians are something different. Their identity isn't in the right or the left. So the right and the left both don't like them. And really he's talking about himself, I think, because he gets critiqued and he's frustrated because he doesn't feel like he's too on the left says he's not far left enough and the right says he's not too far right enough. And so I'm just a Christian, right? That's kind of like the third way in application. Let me play for you one more. I'm not supposed to do this apparently because Tim Keller is deceased, but I don't see a problem with, did I not? I thought I queued it up. Hold on. I think okay. I see what I did. I uploaded a podcast instead of the video itself. Let me see if this is it.
It is really true that in a post-Christian Western society, whether that's in North America or Europe or Australia, wherever you are, there is a great danger that in your interaction, trying to reach out and engage your non-Christian culture, that the culture colonizes you. And the reason for that is that a post-Christian culture is quite different than a non-Christian or pre-Christian culture. The post-Christian culture has co-opted a lot of Christian ideas. It has, for example, taking care of the poor and human rights and many of these things that did not grow up in non-Christian cultures. They grew up in the West in Christian culture. The West has sort of taken over a lot of Christian ideas and taken them to an extreme. So, for example, the importance of human rights and doing justice has been turned into an extreme individualism. And so what can actually happen is a Christian can easily fall into getting co-opted by that individualism. So there's a kind of, I call it a liberal individualism that says, I need to do justice for the poor and I need to do racial justice, but nobody should tell me what to do sexually. There's a kind of conservative individualism that says, I believe in traditional values, but I can do anything I want with my money, and please don't talk to me about race because I didn't own any slaves, and I don't think that's a problem. And it's extraordinarily easy for Christians to think that they are being Christian, but they're actually getting co-opted by either what I would call blue state or red state individualism. That's just not as likely to happen if you're a Christian growing up in India. You're not likely to just sort of fall into Hinduism. You're not as likely if you're a Christian growing up in Japan to just fall into Buddhism, but you are very likely to fall into one of these forms of liberal or conservative individualism, thinking it's Christianity. So what's important is we just need to understand how the biblical worldview differs from all other different worldviews. And so worldview education or apologetics is actually necessary even to disciple people nowadays. For all these reasons, it's not easy to engage the culture and to reach out and to seek to convert people and know them, but we have to do it because the Bible commands us to do it. And even in Western culture where there's those dangers, we have to do that.
Okay. That was the first Tim Keller video, I believe, that I ever highlighted in relation to the third way. I think that was 2018 or 19 that he released this. And I went in on it, I think, in 2019. And the deal with this is, first, Tim Keller's wrong about he doesn't understand. And it's not. I mean, he's a well-read guy on many things, I think, but I don't think he's well-read on the conservative tradition or what the history of politics in the country. He's kind of, and it's like a lot of pastors, right? That's not your thing, and it's okay. But then you have to weigh in on political matters, and instead of just doing the moral thing of like, this is what it's morally the Bible requires us to do, and so forth. He wants to be the TED Talk guy. He wants to be the guru who gives you the view from on high of what's really going on. And so what's really going on to him is you have two kinds of individualism. So the villain is individualism. And if you notice, the way that this whole thing is framed is within his contextualization, which is really where this should be categorized. If you don't understand Tim Keller's contextualization, you will not understand the third way. And I see a lot of guys weighing in on the third way, making it an ism. It's not an ism. It's not an ism. It is for a particular circumstance. The contextualization is an ism. Contextualization is universal. We should always contextualize no matter where we go. Change, adapt the message, whatever the approach, so that we can reach these people. That's the ism. Third way ism isn't an ism. Third way is a specific, particular application of contextualization into a post-Christian society. That's what you heard Tim Keller just say. It's a post-Christian society, and it's different. How is it different? Well, individualism. So we're going to challenge the individualism, and the individualism on the right says that, you know, that you're sort of like your own thing, and you can be racist, I guess, and you can have guns and that kind of thing, right? That's the individualism on the right, and the individualism on the left is you can have abortions and do whatever you want sexually and so forth. This sounds good until you actually start doing some history of political parties and thinking and philosophy, because the right actually is against both of these varieties of supposed individualism. Individualism, sorry, I'm distracted by this little ad. I got to get rid of it. Okay. Individualism springs out of the kind he's talking about. Okay. There is a kind, you have to be, when you say individualism, you have to be careful. What are you talking about? Are you talking about Ayn Rand? Are you talking about libertarianism? What are you talking about? There is a kind of American individualism that I think actually is part of the DNA of America. And it's still with us to some extent. And it means it's the rugged individualism. It's the Turner thesis. We're the pioneers. We're the people that go out west. We figure things out. We meet challenges. Man against nature, man wins. It's the Western, right? It's John Wayne out there in the desert. But here's the thing. That individualism was for the protection of a community. It was, and Richard Weaver even talks about this, that there's a sort of, he compares North and South, but that Northeastern and South, that there is a type of individualism in the South, and this is where the conservative thinking, and it's to this day, conservative politics still reigns supreme, where it's a community-driven and limited kind of individualism that assumes you are born into a community that has responsibilities attached to it. So you're not completely autonomous. Whereas there's a kind of libertarian individualism that developed in the writings of people like Ralph Waldo Emerson, which I think is who he compares. I think he compares Emerson with John Taylor of Caroline, if I'm not mistaken. But Emerson is more of a libertarian kind of detach yourself from society so you can be really free. Anyway, John, what does that have to do with what Tim Keller said? This is what it has to do with it. Liberalism, which has pretty much governed the 20th century, and it's a neoliberalism. It is individualistic in the sense that it looks at individual rights and it wants to expand those and attach them from community responsibility in the natural order. So man becomes the measure of all things, but it can't completely do that because nature doesn't allow it. God didn't design the place for you to be completely disconnected. For you to exist, there had to be two people that loved each other at the very least, right? You couldn't be completely individualistic. So even you see this even with like the transgender thing. It's like, I'm going to be my authentic self. Well, how do you know what your authentic self is? I have experiences. How do you know those experiences? Experiences are with interacting with other people. Oh, goodness, it's not just you, is it? No, it's not. This is, I think, where Carl Trueman's critique falls flat a little bit. It's like, it's not just individualism. It's not just this kind of secular liberalism. That was a philosophy that sort of gained sway, and it became part of our slogans. This is what I'm talking about in Texas, by the way. It became part of our slogans as diversity is our strength, and you can be anything you want to be, and the multicultural society, the neutral society. But those things aren't possible in the real world. You can try to hit them, but you'll never hit them. That's part of the problem. And so you could say that there is a kind of liberalism where you get to do whatever you want, and no one should tell you what to do, and it becomes sort of a libertarianism. And you could say that's kind of that's more on the right. And you could say there's a kind that wants everyone to pay for your individual decisions and your self-actualization. And that's the kind that develops on the left. They're both sides of the same coin. They're both basically looking at man's autonomous interaction and navigation of this world, choices and all the rest, and making that the highest good. So it's humanist at the end of it, right? So for a Christian to critique humanism is perfectly fine. But then what do you see Tim Keller slips in? Well, there's all that is the right wing. That is the left wing, right? That's not the right wing, right? That's actually, there's people who might vote conservative because they want to have their guns and stuff and they're more libertarian, but that's really not what characterizes the right wing. The right wing is mostly made up of very decent, ordinary people. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. It's people who live in communities and they want to protect their communities, and they want to protect them from innovation and revolution. That's mainly what makes up the right wing. Keller is in an urban environment saying this in a very abstract way of like, that's how these philosophies interact in these ways. And in order to reach people with these philosophies, you can't really like be in either one. So it starts off with a bad critique. The bad critique being that these two forms of liberalism are actually conservatism and liberalism, which they're not. That's the bad critique number one. And then so he's off to the wrong start in his own analysis. And then to make matters worse, the church can't take a side because this is something where the church or Christianity or Christian theology and ethics is just so far outside the scope. It's just, it's above. It's not even on the same level. So that allows people in either of these political categories to remain in those political categories, perhaps supplement them with some Christianity, and they could be Democrat or Republican. Tim Keller was a registered Democrat. So you can keep going to Tim Keller's church, and he's not going to offend your sensibilities too much. Or if he does, it's going to be an equal offense. This came up on X because who was it? Now, it was someone who was closer to Keller who was mocking people saying Keller didn't talk about abortion because look, here's Keller talking about abortion. And it's like, yeah, okay, he did. Scott Sauls was saying this. Keller talked about abortion like you could count it on one hand, like maybe it was one time, like, in a sermon. And he has to do a moral equivalency when he talks about it. He can't just like talk about it straight up. He's got to it's got to be an equal opportunity offense when he does it, right? And that's the third way thinking. It's all contextualization. If you are dropped in the middle of an urban environment of New York City, which is overwhelmingly left, and you, though, are coming from a more conservative Christian tradition, so some of the people coming are going to be conservative Christians in the sea of liberalism, you've got to have a way to keep the church together. Got to have a way to do outreach that doesn't offend their sensibilities. And so that's what the third way is. It's a church planning and missions strategy. It's an evangelism strategy, although it's not really evangelism. It's contextualization. I have no better word for it. That's what it is. It's not an ism. And some of the stupid things, and they are stupid, that I've seen online about like, well, what if like coming up with these examples of like philosophical third ways that make sense. Like somewhere between these two extremes, don't you think this is reasonable? It's like, that's not what the third way is. It never was. The third way is that Christianity sidesteps the political debate and allows you, and practically speaking, this is what it did. It allows you to be a Democrat, because traditionally Christian evangelical circles have all been conservative politically because they've been against abortion. These moral issues mean something. But as long as you start taking these vague, more, they're not vague, but these characteristics that don't directly apply to a political issue, like they're not policy. So you take things like J.D. Greer said, like, oh, kindness and sympathy and things. And you put that on the scales and you say, well, that the right doesn't have those. And as long as you start moralizing and expanding the definition of pro-life to include things like smoking or nuclear proliferation or quote unquote racism and disparities, then you can easily come in and say, well, Christianity isn't for either of these. So that's the third way. And really the effect it has was to stifle evangelical votes that normally belong to Republicans. And, this is basically, this has been the philosophy in the negative world. This is the philosophy that David Platt had. This is the philosophy that basically Matt Chandler had. This is, I mean, you name it. It's basically any big kind of preacher from the last 10 years, 15 years in the Reformed evangelical world. This is basically what they advocated, and is out of step with the rest of their teaching. They try to use things like Kuyper. And for a while, I was looking in Kuyper to try to find, like, is this Kuyper? Is Kuyper the problem? And you could find some things in Kuyper that you're like, yeah, I can see how they got this. But ultimately, I think it's not as difficult as that. People, I mean, I've learned this over time. I tend to be more of an issues guy, but a lot of people, they're not going with issues. They're going with vibes. They're going with what's pragmatic. They're going with, what gives them a claim. They're going with what seems to work. That's what the third way was. It was, we can go to these urban areas, these blue areas, and this works. And so it's not an ism. Is it still a threat? I think so. I think there's pastors. Certainly why would you be compelled to talk about Charlie Kirk's murder and then out the same breath, you got to start like saying how terrible Charlie Kirk is, or imply that he was wrong, or imply, like you could just, like, what compels you to do that? Charlie Kirk was, by the end of his life, was very pro-Christian in his sentiments. Like it is third way thinking, I think, that probably leads to this. And those guys that you saw before, that they would have been impacted by that, certainly. But is this the wave of the future? I don't know. I don't know that this is the wave of the future. We'll have to see. I don't see those kinds of guys gaining more steam. I think they've reached a ceiling. It seems like. Now, it's a high ceiling. It still has influence. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see where this goes. I mean, as things become more and more separated, I mean, if you recall, leading up to the American Civil War, the denominations split along north-south lines. Our denominations, I mean, what's going to happen with the lines that are forming now? We already have some splits, but what's going to be, how hardline are people going to be on politics in the ecclesiastical realm? Future holds that answer. I don't know. But that's my little spiel on the third way. This isn't biblical. Of course it's not. Jesus was just very out there with, this is what the Bible says. Let the chips fall where they may. And because conservative instincts, true conservative instincts, I'm not talking about the modern ideologies that call themselves conservative, that are in process of formation, but actual conservative instincts came from a biblical understanding and traditions that upheld the biblical understanding, basically, in our culture. So it's going to be more associated with that. And it's okay to say that from the pulpit. Yeah, it's more, and the Republican Party has embodied that better in recent years than the Democrats, for sure. All right, questions, and then we're done. T. James Boone, Tim Keller on abortion. Yeah, technically it's bad, but the Dems totally want it to happen less often. And Republicans are against redistribution, which is selfish. You understand the third way. John's work on what happened to Tim Keller convinced me the man was apostate. Yeah, I have a whole series on Tim Keller if you guys want to go check it out. Kat says, the church that I recently stopped attending has recently quoted Keller, and I just have to cringe. Some people don't understand. Well, just because they quote, I mean, at this point, it's quoting Keller. They should probably know that they are signaling something, but it might be good to have a conversation. I mean, I went to a church that had TBD and Abuile books they handed out to the members, and I was like, really? But, it was on church membership, and I don't think the leadership was aware of the fact that the guy was a crusader for wokeism. Let's see. I have a question, John. I feel like I understand third way better than two kingdom or R2K. Do they align, or is there no overlap agreement between them? There's no an orthodox and unorthodox two kingdom, right? Okay, so yeah, two kingdoms is defined differently by different people. There's a radical two kingdoms, or some people call it like a reformed two kingdoms. There's classical two kingdoms. So I would be more of a classical two kingdoms guy. But so I see that there's an eternal world or in a temporal world, and there's overlap in institutions that have to take both into consideration. Um, I think there's a modern two kingdoms approach that says it's church and state. That's so that the state and the church can never ever interact in anything, and that's not really true. They have different roles, and I think there's a separation there that we've observed in the different roles. But you recall, even in the Old Testament, the priestly class was responsible for political things. So this is something that it's an arrangement that we've developed in Western culture, which I think is a good arrangement, but it is not the same as classical two kingdoms, which would have been able to have more of a strong Christian. The magistrate would have been able to have more leeway to protect the church and punish heresies and so forth. It makes people very nervous, including an American such as myself. But you certainly don't have. That doesn't mean if you believe in classical two kingdoms that you necessarily have to believe that about the civil magistrate. It's just a separation that's made between the temporal world and the eternal realm. So what does that have to do with the third way? Well, the third way is really that's a separate issue. So the third way, like I said before, is just a contextualization strategy to try to appeal to Democrats and Republicans at the same time without alienating them. And it's more left coded. It more subverts people that are more right. So I would say that people who believe that probably they might be more likely to be a radical two kingdoms person, but not necessarily. I mean, so you could be a third way guy and think the church has a responsibility to preach on politics. You just more or less preach very like you preach your view, your third way view, very it doesn't matter, right? The church is according to some, not a political institution. But then there are those who I would say have the two kingdoms view, and they just don't think the church should approach politics at all. So I hope that helps. I don't know if it does. All right. We've been going about 2 hours, so I'm going to end the podcast, guys. I really appreciate it. God bless, and more coming later this week. Bye now.